Yeah, what do you wear under the kilt?
Depends where I'm going. Like if it's a hard climate, I know I'm dancing a lot. You do get a shaving going down there, so I do wear like little like shorts or something like that. And then you do get cheeky women that like to get their hands in about there,
Right.
which is okay if they're.
Depends on the woman.
It does depend on the woman, but
sounds slightly suspect to be honest with you. I don't know about that. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the GlobeFocus podcast. I am your host, Andrew James, and this week we are in the magical, mystical land of Scotland. I got to sit down with my good friend Tristan Cameron Harper. Tristan is a Scottish man who grew up in Scotland, and that's mostly what we talk about, but he's lived an extraordinary life as a professional hockey player. He was elected Mr. Scotland for 2 years. He's also a tour guide who does guides through Scotland, so if any of you guys are interested in going there, definitely hit him up. And without further ado, let's jump into the discussion. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of GlobeFocus. This is episode 7, and I'm currently here in Scotland.
oh aye, Scotland, Bonnie Scotland.
Bonnie Scotland.
Aye.
With my new friend Tristan, right?
What's up, Andrew?
What's the full name? Tristan.
Tristan? Do you want the full name?
I want the full name.
Tristan Gary John Cameron Harper.
Whoa.
It's a long name. It's a long name. I know. My parents were like, we're just gonna screw this kid over and just make it.
Is that
really
normal
difficult.
in Scotland to have a few?
Not really. No, it's not that common. But I know a few people with long names. But no.
And you're about as Scottish as they come, would you say?
I guess so. I've got a little bit of a twanged out accent though, because I did live in American Canada for a little bit of time. So
that's helpful for us though, because the listeners, it would make it a little bit easier to understand.
And the dialogue. I mean, there's some words that I know that you use in the States
like
and
bro.
Canada and whatnot too. Yeah, like pants, trousers, that stuff too. Soda, pop, fizzy juice, all that stuff.
You wouldn't say soda.
No, that's
What
just
would you
weird.
say? Like Coke.
Fizzy juice.
Fizzy juice.
Fizzy juice.
Wow.
It's weird, I know.
No, fizzy juice is good. I mean, it's just as normal as soda or pop. It's just what we would say.
Well, at least you know you're getting something fizzy, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. Well, we're currently here in Scotland. I'm on a production for a hotel shoot. We're currently at a hotel.
Yeah.
Tristan is our wonderful talent. He's the model.
Happy days.
So mostly what this podcast is about Scotland, but
Okay.
just so the people know who you are, would you give me like a brief introduction about, I know you've done a lot in your life as we've established, but if you could give like just in a couple of minutes, just talk about where you're from, where you've been, so we know who you are.
Okay, cool. So, Tristan, I'm in my early 30s, getting old. But so I grew up in Scotland till the ages of 15, and I was much into rugby. The big sports in Scotland are like soccer, football, or rugby or golf. And I was a rugby boy, and then it got to the point where I was just too physical, and then a family friend came along and was like, you should maybe start, can you ice skate? He's like, maybe you should start ice hockey because you're allowed to fight and get physical. And I was like, okay.
You were too physical for rugby.
I was always getting sent off because I was always just too rough in the scrum and getting, I was getting like timeouts and stuff.
Okay.
So he was like, he noticed the physical aspect. I wasn't super like aggressive, but it was just a little bit physical, rowdy. And then he was like, so he took me skating and I got really good at skating. And then I was like, I want to take ice hockey up. And then I eventually pursued that career, which led me across to Canada. I ended up getting a scholarship to a prep school in Canada. And I pursued the career of ice hockey, and then I turned professional at 18, and then I was professional for 7 years. And then I retired that, and then in between that, I was like a full-time model. I was Mr. Scotland. I did a few videos that went viral, and I do photography, drone work on the side too. And currently, I'm a traditional stone carver.
Okay.
And a full-time mountain guide in Scotland. And I potter about and do little things here and there just to keep me busy and just going with the flow, really, and enjoying the vibe, and whatever happens.
And that's the way, right? And you told me you're a bit of a hippie, a bit of a free spirit.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the way to be, I was like, I like to get my shoes off and like go and walk in nature and hug trees and all that stuff too. I mean, we go more in depth, that's obviously sounds very hippie-ish, but yeah, I'm all about it. I think that's the way to be, just to really immerse yourself in nature and just to indulge. And I think we're kind of going back that way. Everyone's wanting to reconnect with the cold water therapy, the saunas, and like all the plant medicine, all that stuff too. That's really healing for like PTSD and trauma and all these stuff too, like mental problems and stuff too. So I think there's a lot of benefits and pros there. There's not just necessarily all hippie, but I think we've kind of got to get away from the hippie kind of idea. Because when people are like, "Oh, you're a hippie," and it's like, "Oh, you're a hippie," they've kind of got there's like a stigma attached to it. So It's like, I think we're kind of breaking away from that.
Yeah.
And like you're seeing a lot of people that are quite successful that have like the whole kind of, oh, you're a hippie, but you're actually like successful. So
Yeah, well, we can get into that a little bit later on, but there's definitely pros of it. But like, what about growing up what was it like for you growing up in Scotland? What do you think, like, you've been around Americans enough now, Vancouver.
Yeah.
What do you think is different growing up in Scotland versus the US or other countries like that?
I mean, I think compared to America anyway, I think
We're pretty similar.
kind of.
Not actually, right?
No, not at all. I mean,
maybe in the terms of like you're closer to America than you would be like countries in Asia, because I guess we're part of.
Well, we're English speaking first of all, so it's like the major common thing, right?
And the US would kind of come. Obviously, there's certain similarities, but there's a lot of differences for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of difference. Obviously, we watch a lot of movies that are made and created in America and Canada too. And obviously, living across there too, I see a lot of similarities and differences too. And obviously, the food and the people and the culture too. It's like, you be in Scotland and like 20 minutes up the road or half an hour up the road, people will talk English, but they'll talk a complete different dialect. Like, for example, in Glasgow, they talk Glaswegian. And in Edinburgh, they talk Edinburghan. And in Dundee, they talk Dundonian. And in Aberdeen's Aberdonian. And in all these places are within like an hour and a half. And then if you go to the small towns, they talk like a different dialect. And then if you go way to the, like way north up to the islands, they talk like in Orkney, they talk Orcadian. And that was like influenced with like Viking culture. And then there's some form of like people from Egypt that came across like thousands of years ago. So there's a lot of cultures, and obviously we're so close to different countries in Europe that it's really accessible. And obviously even before that, there was lands that were connecting this land too. So it's a much more diverse culture, and it's a much more ancient culture, we say too. And obviously America being much more of a newer culture. But so I would just say it's much more diverse, and we're much more culturalized in America. So I mean, that's really the biggest difference, but I think there is still a lot of similarities, and obviously the Western worldview is quite similar too.
Yeah. So what is all these dialects? Can you understand when they speak to you, or are there some people you wouldn't be able to understand?
I mean, you'll get the old boys, the old ladies and old boys that'll be like mumbling and all this stuff too, and like I think sometimes you kind of do understand it, and sometimes you don't, and you just like nod your head. But for the majority, I understand most of the dialect. And obviously, there's small words that in Glasgow and Edinburgh and Dundee they'll use, which I'm like, oh, I've never heard that word before, and it's like, oh, right, that means that, and where I'm from, from Dundee, and you kind of just, that's how you get to know it.
You get around, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of just kind of slang.
A lot of slang, definitely, too, and just little words like for using like different things, like for example, a ball is like a ba. It's like
right. It's the same words, and if you saw it written down, you'd get it. But it's just how they.
It's weird too, because it's like, oh, you're just lazy. You're not saying the full word.
Do you think someone from these places with thicker accents would ever have trouble understanding Americans, or not really?
Not really, no. I think
which is kind of weird, right?
I think you all talk very pronounced. I would agree, and obviously
hit those R's.
The South, the West, the North, and East, all kind of different dialect and accents. But for the majority, it's really easy to understand and navigate.
I know very little about Scotland, but it's a lot of these different dialects and things developed from like tribes, right? Or clans?
Yeah, there's a lot of clans.
A lot of clans, right?
Clan Cameron. Yeah. And then there's obviously major clans like Campbell, MacDonald. There's some of the major clans, and obviously there's smaller clans too, and obviously clans that came from Ireland. And then you've got different tartans too that represent different clans, and not some clans have like maybe like 6 or 8 tartans, or 2 or 1 or 3. So they have different types of tartans, and that's normally dependent on the landscape and where they're from. So for example, I'm a Cameron clan, I'm from this part of Scotland, and then you get a MacDonald clan, they're from that part of Scotland, and then they come across and they're wearing a tartan and be like, oh, I recognize them. And they might not necessarily be our friends back in time. They might be coming to like slaughter and steal our women.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed. I mean, there's still some little things too. For example, like there's a place, and obviously Glencoe in the West Coast, beautiful part of Scotland. There's like a rival between like 2 clans still.
Right.
The older generation, because back in the day there was like this clan that like kind of tricked this other clan into coming into like a valley, which we call Glen in Scotland, and they made them like put all their weapons aside. And then there was like a mass slaughtering, and they killed like 400 people within they killed the whole clan off in like
my god,
like a day.
So they like said it was going to be peaceful, and then
and then they totally tricked them.
And this actually happened. So technically,
I mean, there's lots of stories like this.
And your like relatives, like your ancestry, would have been part of, or their ancestry would have been part of these slaughterings.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So it's kind of like there is still real. Not beef, but it is also like...
definitely there's still beef there. But it's obviously, as time goes on, people are like either forgetting about it or don't know about it, and they just like move on, and it's like, well, that's the past, It's like, sometimes people get hung up on the past, but, it's what creates, humanity nowadays.
What do you think if you had to go back in time? Do you think you would have lived a better life then, or do you think you would have thrived in like a clan war environment? Because I kind of think you might, man.
Yeah, I think I would have too. Yeah, well, yeah, definitely if I'm invoking my granddad's side of the genes here, but
yeah. By the way, I'm sorry. Just keep the mic. No, so you're keeping it like this. Just keep it kind of
too stationary, like I'm sucking an ice cream.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. getting ice cream.
Sorry about that.
No, it's cool. I think I'd be definitely like a major role in a clan for sure.
Yeah.
I'd want to be definitely
for sure, and it's physical strength, and you're out there, you're working.
Yeah, and it's important because everyone's kind of got their skill and their trade that they'd be contributing to the community, and everyone's got an important role no matter what it is.
For sure. How do you think clans, like, I mean, even just the idea of a clan and the fact that you even know so much about your clan, you said your clan Cameron?
Clan Cameron, yeah.
And so how does that even, like, is it just something like that in the back of your mind growing up? Like, oh, that's an interesting bit of trivia about my family history. Or does it have real implications being in Scotland?
I mean, not really anymore. I mean, back in the day, possibly, and obviously you'd have more value, more wealth, depending on the clan and what part of Scotland you were from. But nowadays, not really. I mean, in America, you can meet so many people with Scottish names, and how far we've got. Scots seem to be everywhere in the world. It's ridiculous, but not really. I mean, it's cool to have a Scottish name, but as a young kid, it's like, it was always cool in school when you'd recognize people with a similar name and stuff. Like, oh, we're maybe from the same tribe, we're related, distant cousins, or whatever it may be. Maybe not, but yeah, it doesn't really make huge impact nowadays.
So, but okay, say you're traveling in a different country and you met someone not only from Scotland, but they happen to be Clan Cameron. Would you feel a sense of camaraderie?
Yeah,
with them?
for sure, absolutely. And it's definitely breaking the ice.
Yeah,
like I have met people in like the States or wherever I've been traveling, and it's like, oh, you're a Cameron too.
Yeah.
And it's like, initially you probably wouldn't have talked to that person, but now you've got something in common, and it gives you a topic to talk about.
How many clans are there? Like, so.
Oh my God, I don't know. There's a lot. There's over probably 40. There's more. I don't know. I can't give you a number. There's a lot. Yeah, and obviously over time names have changed because in Ireland it's like they talk Gaelic, and in Scotland they talk Gaelic. It's spelled exactly the same, but just due to pronunciation, it's pronounced differently. So names would change over time, and obviously McCampbell would be a McDougall or whatever it may be. So names would just change depending on the time.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
What about like Scottish slang? What would be your favorite word that you guys say over here that we might not say in the US?
That's
a tough one. Yeah.
That is a tough one. I dinna ken.
I dinna ken?
I dinna ken. It means I don't know.
I dinna ken?
I dinna ken.
Am I saying it right? I dinna ken?
I dinna ken, yeah.
So if someone came up to me and was like, where's the bathroom? I dinna ken.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it like a funny word to use, or just like a regular word?
No, not really.
I dinna ken?
I dinna ken, yeah. I mean, when you say it, it sounds funny, but when you say it with a Scottish accent, it's like, I mean,
say it again?
I dinna ken.
I dinna ken?
I dinna ken, yeah.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of words, even in the... Like when I did London, there's so many, even London's the same way, or all of England is the same way. There's lots of really specific slang that it's almost like a different language sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought the English talk more posh, but they're definitely more pronunciated in their words.
Yeah, well, it's slightly different. It's just a slightly different. I think Scottish is almost more musical. There's a lot more tonality to it because the tendency to kind of go up near the end of the phrase, things like that definitely add like a musical element.
Yeah, I could see that, and it's totally like, I mean, it's interesting when you go to Glasgow, you're not going to experience this trip, but they talk really high pitched, like, I'm from Glasgow, I talk like that. It's like they talk from like the back of their nasal, and it's just like really different.
Yeah,
and just the way that it's just much different dialect.
I love that though; it makes it interesting.
Yeah, it does make it interesting. Like,
it's really fun.
Yeah, I would say Glaswegians are probably some of my favorite people in Scotland.
Do you think Scottish people in general are really nice? Do you get that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, you always meet a grumpy person wherever you're from, or a person that's having a bad day, But I mean, we don't seem to get a bad rep. Everywhere we go, it's like I'm proud to say I'm Scottish.
Yeah, no one is going to be like, oh, Scottish.
Yeah.
I don't like them. I've never even heard that even a little bit. It's always like, oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah,
Scottish.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. I'm totally with you. So it's good. We've obviously set in,
You're setting a good example, I think. Yeah,
you would hope so. May continue.
What's your earliest memory from Scotland?
My earliest memory? Oh, I mean, I've got so many memories.
Where'd you spawn in, man?
Where did what?
Where did you spawn in?
where I spawned in. I was just like, when I was a wee boy, you know, my granddad taking me in the back of his car on the Highlands.
Yeah?
And my granddad he was a hill walker, but he wasn't much of a hill walker. He liked to go to the pub and have a beer, you know, and chat with the local men, whatever it may be, or go and get cakes. You know, he always knew the cafes and all the folklore and the mythical tales. And he would take me as a wee boy to all these like towns on the Scottish Highlands and tell me all these really cool stories, and I'd meet all these really cool people. And I just remember being a wee boy and being like, oh, this is so awesome, you know. So and just going to all these random places, and it's always like a weird thing when I'm like older and I'm like going back and I'm like, oh, I've been here before. This is weird. But you know, so that's probably one of my earliest memories with really
Going around with your granddad.
Yeah.
And seeing different parts of the Highlands.
Yeah, exploring Scottish and Scottish Highlands.
Introducing you to friends, things like
friends,
that.
people, different types of beer, you know.
When did you start drinking? When did people start drinking in Scotland?
I remember being like, I think it must have been like, I know some people start a little, but not start mega, but start a little bit younger. I was like maybe 11, 12 when I was like sitting with my parents, like, and they'd let me have a beer, you know, let me try some, you know. I wasn't always a big drinker, but you know, you're always curious, and it's one of those things. If you're at a bar or something like that, and you're with your mom and dad or with an adult, they give you a little sip or whatever it may be, and you're curious, you know. What's
your go-to drink?
I like whiskey.
Yeah, you said you like a smoky whiskey, right?
Yeah, but it also depends on my mood too, you know. Like I do like a good whiskey. Yeah, for sure.
I wish I liked whiskey. I like whiskey, but I'm also just not there yet.
You get into it.
Yeah, give me a few years, I'll get there.
Once you get the stories and like you learn like the background and like the tradition of it and the ways you can taste it and how it works with your palate, it'll come into you. Hopefully, maybe not. I don't know.
No, I think it will eventually. But you know, it's crazy. So I didn't have my first drink until I was 19.
Well, that's good.
No, I mean, it's a good thing, but it's very different than the Scottish way because my parents didn't drink at all.
Right.
And so I just planned on not drinking myself. I really respect my parents. And so I said, they didn't drink. I don't need to drink either. And then I started, you know, I turned 19. It was actually with Chris, the guy we're doing the shoot with.
Right, okay.
And we got a beer and I've been drinking ever since. But sometimes I think that the problem in the US is that you don't really drink when you're a kid. Kids will drink a little bit in high school.
Okay.
But when kids really learn how to drink usually is in college, when you go to university.
Yeah, that's a big thing, yeah.
So what happens is you go from not drinking at all, not going to bars, going straight into college, and you're exposed to tons of alcohol all at once. And I feel like it's way worse that way because now they're trying to catch up and they're like trying to figure out their limits and they're trying to figure it all out. Dude, getting smashed.
Not good.
Not good. And I think sometimes if we had introduced it at a younger age, it certainly lowered the limit from 21 to 18. Then you can learn how to drink in almost a healthier, more responsible way.
Even 16 in parts of the Europe, you know. And obviously, I think 16 is good because they just changed it to 18 if it's more harder liquor, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. If it's a beer or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and you can have fun. I mean, I know in Scotland, some clubs in Europe, I think in Scotland too, I'm not entirely sure, but they have like a certain percentage of alcohol they sell.
Okay.
If you're like below 18, between 16 and 18, and you can kind of get away with these things. But yeah, it's just moderation, is it? But I think we always we're just, some children are rebels, and we kind of go through these phases of like, we need to push the limits and see what happens here, and then, you know, you kind of need to get shit-faced and fall on your face a few times before you learn your lesson.
Yeah, well, I think you get those falling on your face lessons earlier in Scotland. And so by the time you're 20, 21, you kind of got it out of your way a bit, you know?
It's definitely different, totally. Because I remember going to Vegas when I was like 21 and like the whole drinking scene with all my friends that were 21, it was just like, it was carnage.
I
was like, easy here, you know? And then when you go to places
and
like...
they're probably like, oh, he's Scottish, we got to show him that we drink in America. So
yeah, but Americans can hold their drink too. Definitely. So I guess everyone can, but...
No, that's true. To be honest with you, every country I go to, a lot of times they're like, we drink the most. Almost every country kind of thinks they drink the most. And I'm like, not everyone can drink.
It's so funny too. I find it such a weird concept. It's like, what have you really got to prove though? You know?
I mean, that's a great perspective, especially from a Scotsman.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, what are you trying to prove exactly?
I mean, nowadays, like I think of alcohol, it's like it's a spirit. So I like look at alcohol. It's like you should do everything in moderation. It's like I believe it's like alcohol is like the spirit snatcher because it's like stealing your spirit, and it's like because people change when they're drinking alcohol. I mean, some people are more chilled out. Their barriers drop and they're more outgoing, they're more extroverted and whatnot. And then some people, it's just become this angry being.
Yeah,
and it's like just this thing, it just takes over them, and it's not necessarily the best.
It is too bad being around people like that. I definitely have been around people who I knew really well sober, and then you do hang out with them and you get a little too drunk, and then you're like, oh, you do see a side of people. it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I try to have the empathy to understand that they're in a different headspace. But it does suck when I'm with someone who I don't want to get drunk with.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Not fun.
No.
When you're traveling and you leave Scotland, what's like one thing you miss when you're in the US? What's like the biggest thing you're thinking about?
Oh, the fresh air.
The fresh air. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's a big thing. It's like, because when you travel, and for a lot of people that are watching us travel, you go someplace, like the first thing that hits you is the air, or like the warmth, or like the moisture in the air. It's like Scotland. It's like,
it's fresh here.
Yeah, it's fresh, and it's like you're breathing like good oxygen. That's obviously not putting any other place down, but it's like
no, absolutely not. But like I noticed as soon as it's very green, it's very lush here, and so because of that, it's just very clean air.
Yeah, the air, and then the water too, because like tap water is really good here, or just even drinking water straight from the hills. It's like it's just so pure.
It's fresh.
Yeah, it's so nice.
Yeah, it does. It is really refreshing being out in this environment. Super good for the soul.
Yeah,
breathing.
Soul cleansing.
Soul cleansing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else though? Do you think? I mean, okay, you like the Highlands a lot, right?
Yeah.
You like to hike around. You're a guide.
Yeah. So being a guide, obviously, I miss the landscape. I feel like when it's sunny weather in Scotland, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. And like we get beaches up north that are legit like you're in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And we get all beautiful like nature. We get like seals. We get like sharks. We get whales. Dolphins, and it's such an epic place. I mean, the weather obviously isn't super hot yearly round, but it's really dramatic, and it's got its own character about it, and every place is different. Yeah, and it's just cool to go and explore. And it's like, from a photographer's point of view too, it's really there's so much to capture, and you go to the same place like 5 or 6 times during the year, and it's always going to be different. And even just the energy and the vibes of it feels so much different. And even when you're going with different people, the energy is different.
Are there very specific seasons? Is that why it feels different?
I mean, we're obviously like some countries don't also get all the seasons in one year. Like it's quite seasonal here, and you get the colors changing, and you get the animals that obviously graze differently and all that stuff too. And it affects people's moods too. And you just kind of get into this wave, and it's just like, it really does. There's more character in the landscape, I feel, and it's really kind of comes through and into your own being.
Well, you could relate to this because of Vancouver, but in Seattle, I definitely noticed that because I moved to Seattle beginning of the year. Seattle's a lot like this weather.
Yeah, green.
Very gray.
Yeah.
It's green, and because of the rain, there is beautiful nature out there, like Scotland, really green, very lush. But the weather definitely affects people's mood.
For sure, yeah.
But in a good way. So right now it is summer, and it's beautiful, and people are outside, people are smiling. Yeah. I remember the first days when we really had sun, it's like this weight lifted off of people's shoulders.
Totally. And everyone's more relaxed.
Yeah.
Everyone's like up to do things, you know, and you're more of an extroverted person. So
it's more of a yin. It's kind of like the balance. You do appreciate the sun more when you have this.
It feels like it comes at exactly the right time. Even like my friends and myself, it's like this winter in Scotland was a really wet winter. I mean, in the Central Belt and the Highlands and the Cairngorms and stuff, that's like the biggest national park in Scotland. It was a pretty shit winter. It was really wet, but it was cold. It was dropping down to like -20, minus 25 some days maybe. -30 with the gust winds. But when the winter came, it was like, thank fuck. I was just like so ready for summer to come, and it came. And it's like you could totally feel that everyone's just like relieved. Shoulders are relaxed, and everyone's easing into it, and everyone's happier. And we've had like just a killer 2 weeks here. Like the sun's been great.
It's been beautiful.
Yeah, it's been really good.
What is the most Scottish thing you think you've ever done in your life?
Scottish thing?
That's just like the peak.
What, in Scotland or in general? Well,
I mean, just like what do you think is just like the most Scottish thing you could do or that you've done? Besides being Mr. Scotland, which we'll get to that. That's
roaming the hills in a kilt is pretty Scottish, I would say. Yeah.
Do you do that?
I do it for. So I like wearing a kilt. I generally do wear a kilt, like not for fun. Just I enjoy it. Right? It is fun. It is comfortable too. Commando. Sometimes I wear like.
Yeah. What do you wear under the kilt?
Depends where I'm going. Like if it's a hard climate, I know I'm dancing a lot. You do get the shaving going down there, so I do wear like little like shorts or something like that. And then you do get cheeky women that like to get their hands in about there.
Right.
Which is okay if they're...
Depends on the woman.
It does depend on the woman. But
sounds slightly suspect, to be honest with you. I don't know about that.
But so women can be pretty aggressive about it too.
Wow. I guess that's kind of like roles reversed,
It's funny, man. Yeah, up-kilting. That's what my friend calls it.
Up-kilting.
Like, up-kilting.
Is this a problem?
It is a problem, actually. Seriously, it is a problem, especially when you get like American drunk women when they get super curious and they're in it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, man. God. Oh, Americans.
You get Americans, yeah.
Well, they see a man in a kilt. Do you think that just kind of...
Yeah, well, yeah. What's Under the Scotsman's Kilt.
For an American woman, or yeah, I guess a guy in a kilt.
That's a good song actually. It's called What's Under the Scotsman's Kilt.
Okay.
If you ever get a chance to listen to it, it's pretty funny.
Okay, I'll definitely give that a listen. I mean, what do you think? How often do you find yourself in a kilt per year, do you think?
Oh, like 50 times maybe.
So it's pretty substantial.
Yeah, I like wearing a kilt. I genuinely do. I've got 8 kilts.
Okay.
I've got quite a few kilts.
Do they like different colors, different patterns?
Yeah, they're different patterns. I've got I've got a plain black one. I've got like ones that are like quite wacky, wild, that like glow in the dark and everything.
Do you think is that standard in?
No,
Scotland?
not necessarily. I mean, do
they sell them in stores normally?
They sell them in stores.
Yeah.
You can get like the cheap ones that are made in China.
Yeah.
Or
that's
you
kind of funny. A Scottish kilt made in China.
It's terrible. Don't get me started.
That's an American move right there.
Yeah. I mean, but people want, people nowadays want quality over quantity, and it's like you get some really nice like tweed kilts and like really cool, nice plaid, as you call it, turn. But it's just some epic styles. And obviously people want that link into Scotland. Obviously different parts of the landscape might be kind of influenced out through the style of the kilt. And you can make it really wild, or you can make it really just like neutral and like muted.
Well, I love the kilt, and I love cultures who have specific things like that, because so much of the world is becoming homogenized.
Yeah.
And when you travel, and you know, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this, but just like so many places in the world are becoming the same because of social media. So I think it's best to lean into our differences, and so things like kilts, like fuck yeah, rock the kilt.
Yeah, 100%.
Keep the kilt alive.
Let's get you in a kilt.
I'll get in a kilt, man.
I love seeing a kilt.
Yeah, I'll definitely put a
you'd
kilt
be
on.
so awkward at first, but you probably end up loving it because you just forget about it.
The airflow must be nice.
Yeah, it can be pretty hot too, though.
Yeah,
you get pretty hot. Yeah.
Do they have like athletic kilts?
You can get athletic kilts, yeah. They're like special material,
like for running or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't really run in a kilt though.
Could you?
Yeah, you could, but it'd be pretty uncomfortable for.
Are there any Scotsmen out there who are just like really rocking the kilt a lot?
Well, I've got a friend, my friend Howie, who owns 21st Century Kilts, and he's dressed all like celebrities, like you wouldn't even think what celebrity he's guessed, like top A-list celebrities, and he wears a kilt every day. He's wearing a kilt every day since he was like 8 years old.
Really?
And he's coming up at 44.
Okay, so he's committed to the bit.
Oh, he's committed. It's part of his life, man.
Yeah.
And he's always wearing a kilt.
I mean, are there any drawbacks, do you think, to that? Like, you got to keep your legs together when you're sitting down.
Kind of. I mean, the kilt kind of falls in between, so it protects your goodies down there.
Yeah.
And when you're
kilting, really seems like the only potential.
That's really it. And then traveling can be a little bit of a pain because obviously the buzzer, the beeps go off and stuff too, and it's like there's nothing going on. You can hide a lot of stuff in the kilt too. It's pretty,
Yeah. You could get a lot of things in the kilt.
Yeah, you could. I mean,
this is a dumb question. Do women wear kilts?
Yeah, women wear kilts, but they were like shorter though. And you get long ones.
It was like back in the day in the clans and everything. Was it like the men would wear a kilt and the women would also wear a kilt, or did they have their own thing?
A kilt's like on a man, it's like maybe just above the knees.
Okay.
And a woman would maybe wear like a shorter, like just maybe higher.
Okay.
They can get away with that, or they wear like a nice dress that's like tartan. But I think women can have more movement to kind of play about with the kilt and the style, But I think nowadays things are becoming so both ways that we could really do anything, and it's cool because there's this fabric, it's so much to work with, and there's so many big brands too. They're like Burberry and like Vivienne Westwood.
Do they do kilts?
Well, they use like plaid, and they have adopted the style of like the kilt, in their own kind of way. Yeah.
I mean, I could definitely see kilts coming back in a big way. I think men are opening up to the ideas of fashion. I actually am about this because I think the whole idea of fashion is fluid in the sense that people should be able to wear what they want. I'm not saying kilts obviously don't represent this. It's a masculine thing. It's always been masculine in Scotland. But the idea of it is like guys should be able to wear whatever they want. And I think if you're a masculine man, you should be able to be perceived as masculine no matter what you're wearing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it swings always. I think it's not even necessarily a masculine thing. I mean, people will be like, it's a skirt, but it's like people have their national dress code, and it's just the way it is. And I think that's a form of respect too, and it's cool. Like
it's super cool. Like I said, lean into it. Like it's different.
I love it. Yeah, it's great to see people like just really embrace their culture.
And everyone would be stoked on it. Like. Yeah, for sure.
And travel with it too. It's cool.
What about Scottish women? What do we think? Are they tricky? Are they difficult? Like if I'm going to Edinburgh. Like
I mean, I think Scottish women are great too.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're all good. Yeah, I think they're fantastic. I mean, the thing about Scottish.
You're gonna stick to Scottish women? Do you think? You'll marry a Scottish woman?
I don't know. I'm really open ended to whatever happens. I'm all about the energy and the good vibes. You know, if there's energy matches and
but like, what do you think if you had to stereotype, if you had to generalize just a little bit here? What do you think like Scottish women are kind of like?
I think the good thing about Scottish women is they're really direct
Okay.
and they're blunt and they don't really bullshit. You know,
So good communicators.
Yeah, they are good communicators. I mean, we all have our little issues and problems too, which we kind of need to work through sometimes. But for the overall majority, they're pretty direct and open and honest. And you know, as a nation, we're pretty proactive in our direction, and the women are a part of that. And it's good to see women taking more of a front lead in things. And it's nice to be part of that role, you know, and equally respect and encourage that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think being direct and open is the best way to do it, because otherwise it gets to, I think a lot of cultures are very passive aggressive.
Can
a lot
be,
of
yeah.
people are. And that's just the worst. When you have to like play some kind of a mental game to figure out whether or not someone's upset with you. Usually any kind
Not
of...
fun.
No, it's not fun, man. It's not fun at all.
Not good.
So I think the Scottish ways, we could definitely learn.
Yeah, but I think, you know, you'll be able to... You've only been really stuck here, been working a little bit, and you're going to get out up to Edinburgh and Isle of Skye.
Yeah, we're very close to England right now too. Like,
yeah, we're
to the
Scottish
border.
borders. Yeah, so I consider Scottish borders England because we're right there. You know, so it's like really when you get up to the Scottish Highlands and like some of the major cities, you'll start, and the smaller towns, you'll start
That's
really
when I'll feel it.
you start to feel the vibe, and you know, in the little local shops and the cafes, just the interacting on a social basis with local people. Yeah, that's when you'll really start to get a feel, and obviously seeing different parts of Scotland.
What do you think living in Scotland is like? As far as visiting is one thing, when you leave, what you miss the most is nature. As far as living here, what is do you think there's anything different about the way of life on a day-to-day basis for Scottish people?
I think it's much slower than the major cities, like obviously London, New York, and plus Singapore, and all these big cities and the busier hubs. Even the cities here, they're much more like a slower paced life.
Yeah.
And then even just you can escape the city so easily and quick, and the traffic's it's not bad. You know, even when Scottish people say traffic's bad, it's really not bad.
It's not that bad.
No, it's a pretty good way to live, you know, and I think we're really privileged the fact that we've got all these surrounding countries in Europe that are super accessible, and we're obviously our own country, and there's so much sea around us, and I think there's just so much opportunity, and we are such a forward-thinking nation.
There's a lot of like myths and legends
Yeah.
surrounding Scotland.
Yeah.
Probably because it's such an old culture, but also I think it's got the Iceland thing going on where when I went to Iceland, I remember being like, I can see why they believed in dragons.
Yeah.
Because you see the nature, it feels so mystical, it feels so powerful, it feels like anything is possible. So of all like the Scottish legends and myths, what is one that you just wish was true? Or you'd like to
I mean,
believe
I
in?
think they're all true. I think we're just like a little bit later in time here. I mean, there's the word called like Pardew. There's like the rock giants. I mean, there's the ones when you go up to Skye, you'll see it. It's like you're looking at the rocks and it's like that looks like a dragon or like some form of giant that's just like lied there and died or having a rest.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, there's lots of talks about fairies and like the Ishi. You know, it's like the hidden folk, much like Iceland. You know, and obviously, I think it's important because all these like mythical and folklore tales, even though they're kind of made up, there's somewhat of like a focal point and a truth in the story that kind of teaches people. And, you know, I mean, there's so many stories. I mean, I like the stories about fairies and like, it's just cool because it like sparks imagination and it keeps like that inner child alive. And that's such an important trait to just keep in our whole life until the day we die.
What are the fairies? Is this like just a general folklore?
So there's lots of folklore. So for one example, there's a loch up in the Cairngorms and it's called Loch An Uain, and it's otherwise known as the Green Loch. And the loch is actually like pure like lush green, and it's obviously based because of algae. But the story is that it's green because the fairies wash their clothes in there, and all the green from their clothes goes into the water. And it's cool, you know. Yeah, it's a cool story. I mean, there's quite a few stories around Scotland. I mean, you keep digging deep, and obviously they kind of all over from Ireland to Scotland to Scandinavia. In Iceland, there's a few similarities.
For sure. There's definitely like a similar type of, it's like world building.
Yeah.
Basically, like all the different folklore legends, they could exist in the same like cinematic universe. If that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Harry Potter, for example, a lot of like her ideas kind of sparked from Scotland, you know?
Yeah. It really?
Yeah, it's J.K. Rowling. So when you go to Edinburgh, you go to the Grass Market, which is Diagon's Alley. And then there's like a cafe there and there's like the castle and everything too. And then obviously when you go further up to Skye, there's like the Glenfinnan Viaduct, which is like the train, the Hogwarts Express, and it's going across the bridge and steam train. That's where she got her inspiration.
Okay.
So there's lots of little things.
And not the witchcraft, but just the element of magic.
Well, there's witchery. I mean, obviously,
even the trees here look like they could just like, I could do like a spell on that tree right
Well,
now.
there is. I mean, druids and priestesses and obviously wizards and witches too.
Are these still people who practice
yeah.
these
People
things?
still practice. I've got like friends that are very much like
into it.
they're into it and they practice it.
Do you think they really believe it?
I think it's part of our tradition, and something that people are going back to, and also to do with like the planets and astrology too. It's all connected. And standing stones, people are attracted to all these standing stones, for a reason. It's like like obviously Stonehenge, and then you go up to Orkney, you got the standing stones of Stanness, of Ringer Broadgar, and then you got Callanash standing stones. And these standing stones are like, it's like you've heard of ley lines.
Yeah.
So for example,
they're on the ley lines of the world.
Yeah.
Right?
So like all the energy points. So for example, there's this one theory that like you've had acupuncture or anything like that before?
I haven't.
Okay, so you get acupuncture and they put like these needles in you, and it's like triggering your nerves, and it's like working with your energy and your nerves, and it's like making things work and move more efficiently. So imagine standing stones being like they've got
acupuncture for
they're like 10 foot tall, but below it they're like 5 or 10 foot below, and they're in the ground and been there for thousands of years. So it's like trigger points for like activating their ley lines, and then times of years like winter solstice, summer solstice, the moon and the sun, it's like sending like energetic frequencies to like this part of the planet, and it's like connecting with like these ley lines, and it's sending energy through the land, and people go there and they like go into a trance state, and then it's like these are all like part of like druids and like witches.
This
and
is
like
all part of the witchcraft.
Yeah, not necessarily witchcraft, but like druids and like the mystical aspect, the unseen. Yeah. So I wouldn't really narrow it down to one specific person and what they believe in, but it's like the modern age. So you'll get someone, that's like just living a day-to-day life, working on a job, but equally on the sidelines, they'll be like fully working on like witchcraft. And it doesn't always necessarily mean badness. It's, it could be really good. You get people that like to heal and take
Harry
care.
Potter witchcraft.
Exactly. Totally.
Not all bad witchcraft. What do you think is one thing about Scotland that people might misunderstand?
Misunderstand? When we get drunk and mumble a lot of shit. I don't know. I don't know.
I guess there's not really any bad stereotypes about Scotland. So do you think you guys drink as much as people? That would be the one that's like, I wonder if that's true.
I think we do drink a lot. I think there's quite a common drinking scene here. There's a lot of pubs.
Yeah.
Like you go to one town.
Pub, that's a very common. Like people in the U.S. If I was going to Scotland, that would be one of the first things they'd say. Was like, oh, you're gonna get hammered.
Yeah, get hammered. Go to a pub and like you want to find a ceilidh, and then hopefully someone's playing a fiddle and like someone's got like a music instrument. And they're just having a dance.
That's what I want.
Yeah, you want that. That's epic, and you want to get on the dance floor and you want to be swinging and like just swaying.
I'd have
and
to
like
be pretty drunk to get on the dance.
Well, not even. You just want to get on there. Once you're on there, you're stuck and you're having a blast.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think that's interesting, the drinking culture for sure, but probably not. Do you think it's as much as they say, or
yeah, I think a drinking culture is quite a common thing. I think people now are obviously getting healthier and they're focusing on their well-being, so they're kind of leaning towards green smoothies and working out. But the drinking culture is still there. People like to go to the pub and have a pint, and it opens up at 12 in the afternoon, and they're there for the first pint, getting a lager shandy, whatever it may be, or a pint of Guinness. I don't know.
What do you think most from a tourism perspective? Because the people who are listening to this podcast are people who might want to come to Scotland.
Right.
So these are big questions, but, what do you think a lot of tourists might do wrong when they come to Scotland?
Spend too much time in places where they can make time everywhere else.
Okay.
Like if you're going to Edinburgh, spend a few nights there, have some like set intentions of what you want to do, and then make sure you go to another city, and then make sure you go to a couple of towns and get up to Highlands, and then maybe explore out with places that are like quite generalized. Obviously, Isle of Skye is epic, but there's so many other cool places. Like you can go deep into Highlands, and there's so much cool like sculptures, things to see, landscape like rocks and like lochs and like mountains, and like even just different bars and different restaurants and how the vibe of the people in that community are. It's like just good to go and experience it all. But it's one of those things like even when I've got clients, it's like I take them to a part of Scotland and they like book me for like 3 or 4 days or however long. And then at the end of the trip, they're like, "Oh, I have to come back here now. We have to book you again." Or sometimes they want to go back to the exactly same place, but come in the wintertime and experience
do it a different way.
Yeah. And it's like, there's just so much to see, and they're connecting with the land in such a different way.
When you're taking these people on tours, what's the spot or what's the area that you most often see people have the best reaction to, where they go, "Wow, that is something I haven't seen before"?
Well, definitely the northwest of Scotland, like the west coast. I mean, the terrain and like how rugged and raw it is. It's just so beautiful. And I mean, even like I've taken clients up and it's like you don't see anything because it's just like pissing down and it's like windy and it's like cloudy and it's like, fuck, I'm really not enjoying this as a guide, and I'm like worried and I'm like making my clients are not like, they're not happy, but they come down and it's like, oh my God, that was like the best thing ever. Like the rocks and like climbing up there and scrambling and feeling like the power of the wind and like just seeing that terrain, and then, you know, just it all opens up once you get back down to the base camp. But yeah, the West Coast, I mean, just exploring the raw, pure nature of our land. How about me ask you a question? I mean, when you flew into Scotland, what was like, did you see much of the landscape when you were flying in?
Not too much because it was cloudy, but all of us on the plane, it's the green. The green pops more than I thought it would. It like, really, there's a Scottish green, I think, that like, is underappreciated. It's just all this rain, all this weather over all this time. It's just
but you've not experienced much rain since being here, though. It's mostly just been sun.
No, but I know that there is rain, you know, obviously. So that's where all of the...
And then the midges. You've not experienced the midges yet, have you? You've heard about the midges, right?
No.
What? Okay, so like midges are like, not mosquitoes, they're like these tiny little insects.
Okay.
They're not like poisonous. They don't carry like any like diseases, but they're like tiny and they come in like the billions.
Really?
And they bite midges? You. Oh, bro. They bite you and it's like you have to wear a midgie net, definitely. But even with a midgie net, they sometimes find a way. But you'll see like videos.
Are they mosquitoes?
No, mosquitoes are a little bigger. These are like smaller. There's a word for them. I can't remember.
Like fleas or something?
No, definitely not fleas.
They're flying.
Yeah, so when you go up to sky, you'll be like standing there like getting an epic moment and it's going to look clear skies, hopefully, fingers crossed you get great weather, which I'm sure you will. And then you'll be like, fuck, these fucking things are biting me, but they're not actually like poison based. That's the midges. They're getting you. And you're going to experience them, and then you're going to have to want to do a video on.
Yeah, I think it is just
the midges.
Don't put it too close to you.
Right here.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so they bite you. Is it like itchy? Do you get like bite marks
from
them?
Just irritating.
Yeah.
That's so irritating.
Is it year round?
No, it's mostly like the summer months.
Summer months in specific parts of the country?
Pretty much all over like North Scotland. So
okay.
Like, yeah, from like the Highlands upwards, yeah.
Okay.
It's bad.
Is there like midgie spray?
Yeah, it's called Smidge. And there's another one I think called Avalon or something like that. I like the Avalon one. I think it's called Avalon. But
have these been around for a long time?
Forever, yeah. You get them in like Norway and then you get them in like Ireland. And you get them
Makes sense.
They're not good. And you get the ticks too, you know.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Scottish food.
Okay.
There's mixed reviews, but the first one I want to talk about, this is my first experience, is Iron Brew, which is not Scottish food, but it's a Scottish drink, a Scottish soda.
Yeah.
And I just had one in our hotel room because I just literally, before we'd even talked about it, opened the fridge and I saw this drink. I thought it was like orange, but it's a very, very unique flavor. But like you said, so it's a Scottish soda. I think it's been around for a while now.
Yeah, a long time. Yeah, I can't remember how long, but it's long.
And it's one of those drinks where I taste. It's like kind of like black licorice in the sense that there's nothing like the taste.
It's you can't really put a finger on it, can you?
You couldn't say.
It's kind of good. It's kind of addicting.
Well, this is what you said. You said to me, try it again, and you're gonna like it a little bit more, and I did.
Yeah.
And then I had to get. And now I'm kind of a fan. I think.
Yeah.
Of Iron Brew.
It's for like when people have a hangover in Scotland. It's like, give me an Iron Brew.
And you'll crush it.
Yeah, you'll get an Iron Brew. Or Lucozade, which is like an energy drink, but because of the sugar and stuff. Maybe some electrolytes, but I don't think there's any electrolytes in it. But yeah, the Iron Brew is like, people get like a big like 1 liter glass ball and it was just like...
For the next day after the hangover.
They would just chug it. Yeah.
So that's what I should do. If we go out, we're going to have a night out in Edinburgh, like the next morning, wake up,
Just don't get a diet. The diet Iron Brew tastes awful.
I don't want
just
that.
Just get the regular Iron Brew. It's good though.
Go all the way. What do you think about Scottish food in general?
I mean, it's pretty... I mean, it's not like the tropical countries. We don't get lots of like crazy fruits and vegetables, but it's obviously we get lots of like potatoes, like blackberries, raspberries, blueberries in the summer months, which they're so good, and the strawberries are amazing in Scotland. Meat's good. The meat produce, the milk produce is really good too. Cheese, the whiskey obviously is really good.
Yeah.
Fish and chips is a big thing. We're obviously being surrounded by sea. There's so much fish and chips. And then a thing that kind of, I know they have it in the States when you go to like state fairs, but you get like a deep fried Mars bar.
Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It's pretty good.
Well, you know, we don't even have Mars bars in the US.
What?
Not common.
I didn't know that.
It's not common at all to have a Mars bar. They'll have them in specific places, but usually,
Seriously?
if you go into most normal like gas station or Mars bars, not there.
Snickers though, right?
Snickers, yeah.
Okay, yeah, but your chocolate's pretty shit in America.
American chocolate sucks.
Tastes like plastic.
Too chemically. They're cutting too many corners with the chocolate.
It's not good. Yeah.
No, I've actually always never been a big chocolate guy, and I think that's because I was eating American chocolate.
It's garbage.
And when you come over here, it doesn't have the aftertaste.
No.
There's a weird aftertaste.
Yeah, you're not gonna like that plastic like layer in your mouth.
Yeah. I definitely will give that to the rest of the world. They do chocolate better.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So I mean, the Scottish produce. I like the Scottish produce quite a lot.
I like some of it, but I think the Scottish food, I mean, I just might not know. The fish and chips, I want to have some good classic fish and chips.
Yeah, with some tartar sauce.
But some of I'm going to be real with you, some of the English, I don't know if it's English or Scottish, but like the black pudding type stuff.
Yeah, like pig's blood and like wheat.
Man, I struggle a little bit with that. Yeah.
You get some really good stuff though. Like I'm not a big black pudding guy either, or haggis. But,
yeah, what is haggis exactly?
It's like, well, traditionally it's like sheep stomach.
Right.
And it's like...
There was
like
some downstairs and it's just like...
Yeah, I mean...
For breakfast. I was like, we're going to eat sheep stomach for breakfast?
Yeah, I mean, it's not probably actual sheep. Nowadays, it's a little bit different, you know.
What do you think it is? It's probably something, though.
Eh? Yeah, it's got like...
It's probably worse.
No, well, yeah. The bad stuff, you're buying a really cheap, like, downgraded
Right,
stuff.
Yeah.
But no, it's good, though. Like, you know, you go to and you're like, dress the haggis. And like, you'll get someone that comes in with a big piece of haggis.
Yeah.
And it's obviously filled with, like wheat and, like, lots of good food and, like, obviously certain animal produce too in there. And then they'll like dress the haggis, so they'll say like a poem which is from Robert Burns, and then he'll like stab the haggis, and then he'll like split it amongst everyone, and everyone just has a feast and drinks whiskey.
Well, that sounds lovely.
Like traditionally,
nice.
you know, but it's not something you'd eat every single day. I mean, some people like haggis every single day.
Well, look, here's the thing. I was talking to my friend. I was talking to Chris about this.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I got some of the black pudding, and I was trying to eat it, and I was like, this is kind of weird for me. But he was like, look, why is it weird to eat a sheep's stomach and not like the sheep muscle? Like we always eat the muscles of animals. That's the usual part, like the meat, which is muscles.
Yeah.
So why is it any weirder to eat like the liver or to eat like the
yeah.
stomach? I mean, it's still just an animal that you're eating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get past that a little bit.
I think. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't have to get it past it. Sometimes it's just, you know, it's your thing.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it's not my thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe it is.
Yeah.
Iron brew.
Iron brew, yeah. Get some iron brew down you.
One step closer to being Scottish.
Next thing is iron brew ice cream if you can find some.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think I could track it down.
You will. You're going to Edinburgh. There'll be someplace.
What do you think? Are there any Scottish sweets that are particular?
Oh, sweets. Curly Whirly.
Curly Whirly?
I don't know if it's Scottish though, but I'm British. But yeah, Curly Whirly is pretty good. It's like a caramel.
How about like dishes though?
Dishes?
Yeah.
Well, a good smoked salmon, you know.
Yeah.
Smoked salmon, like
Classic.
mashed potatoes, you know.
Classic.
Like a nice sauce.
Very fish based.
It is a very fish based, yeah. Maybe obviously some wild game like stag, like deer. I used some deer.
I had the deer last night.
Yeah,
super good.
You had some roe deer. It was yeah. That's
no, it wasn't raw.
No, roe
deer. Yeah.
R-O-E, yeah. Roe deer. Yeah, that's like the.
I was like, I don't think the deer was raw, man.
No, I thought it was a little bit raw. I think you had a medium rare, didn't you?
Yeah, it was definitely rare. It was good though.
You get some rawness in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looked good actually.
When you were growing up, was there like a dish that you would look forward to as a kid?
Steak pie.
Steak pie.
I don't really eat beef these days, but steak pie, yeah, it's just like obviously steak that's like in a nice gravy, and it's like just like a kind of like pastry based over the top.
Yeah.
And just some mashed potato and some like greens, some like broccoli and some spuds, some potatoes in there.
And then I was going to ask you about like family structures in Scotland. Again, we're generalizing here.
Yeah.
It's a big country. People are different. But how do you think the general family is? What's like an average family setup? Do you think the kids grow up very close to their family? Are you close to your extended family? Is it more individualistic? I know it just depends maybe where you're from.
Yeah, it depends where you're from, definitely. Like if you're from the smaller towns up north, it's more of a community feel.
Okay.
In the cities, it can be like that too, of course. You know, I've not got experience with all families, but I think it's really diverse. And I think, you know, there's also a problem with families too, because you get a lot of people that get on benefits, so they get supported by the council, and they were like have kids at 16, so they get funded from the council and support
In like small towns.
Yeah, in small towns. But I know like in one city, it's like one of the teenage capitals of like Europe.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's in Dundee.
It's just a common thing to.
It's just
have
a common thing
child.
people do, and it's like it's more of like a working class kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, but I would say people overall are quite close with the family and stuff like that too. Like a lot of my friends are pretty close to their family, and you know, it's quite diverse.
Yeah, lots of different people, lots of different ways to do
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that's interesting though. Having kids younger in certain areas. You said the teenage
capital of Europe at one
teenage
point.
like parent capital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, like it's like even younger than 16, like 15, 14 sometimes, maybe
Having
even younger.
kids. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. I mean, that's some places in the U.S. that are like that. I'm from smaller. I'm from Virginia, which is more conservative. So
Right,
like
okay.
people have kids younger for sure there.
Okay.
I'm more used to that. But I think sometimes people go too far with that. Like the whole kids situation. I used to be the type of guy who said I would never have kids. I'm young. I'm too young to be thinking about kids anyway.
Young buck, yeah.
But I used to be that guy who was like, I'm never going to have kids. But everyone says that these days.
Yeah,
so I'm like, wait,
yeah,
some of us have to
totally.
have kids at some point, right?
We don't have to have kids. I mean, there's also...
Yeah, but I'm saying if like the whole population stops having kids, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem. But there's a generational thing too. I think people are kind of changing, you know, like there's not as much pressure to have kids younger.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. But is that I think that's a good thing and a bad thing though, because sometimes there might be like there's like an overall lack of responsibility in culture these days, and part of that is because people don't have to take care of kids.
Yeah.
And so maybe not having kids when you're like 14, but I think having kids at some point is definitely could be helpful for some people.
Yeah, I think obviously people are living their lives much differently, you know, like you're traveling with work and, you know, people are younger traveling much more. You know,
Yeah.
and there's not as much pressure to have kids because we're at an age where we're eating healthier, we're living better, higher standards, you know, so our lives are longer, so we can have kids at a later age.
Yeah.
And people want to kind of just live their life younger, and then when they get to their point where they're more settled, they've got a more established job, then I think that's when they start to think about having kids.
Yeah, because the problem that I hear is like the whole concept of traveling when you're older has never made sense to me.
Yeah.
Traveling always is a good thing, and if you travel when you're older, perfect. By all means, travel when you're older if you want to and you can and everything like that. But don't, if you want to travel when you're young, don't push it off until you're older. Just travel when you want to, because some people definitely have the mentality of I need to work right now and I need to have kids right now, and then after I raise them and then I retire, then that's the time to travel. But I think it's kind of the opposite. Like for me personally, I want to see as much as I can for the next 20 years probably.
Totally, yeah.
You know, 10, 15, 20 years, and then settle down and live out the rest of my life in a cabin somewhere.
It gives you experience too, you know, for when you do ever have kids, if that happens.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
one
Something
thing.
like that. Yeah, it could definitely help. I mean, you've traveled a good bit, right? For hockey and everything.
Yeah, hockey, I lived between Canada, America, Sweden, Germany.
You said you went, when did you go over to America for the first time? Or
So before that, I traveled with my parents.
Okay.
Obviously went for little holidays and stuff like that too. But like I officially moved over to that side of the world. I was in Canada for 2 years, and then I moved back to Europe, and I was in Holland for a year, and then I was living between, at the time I was living between St. Louis and California. I was training in California off season with my friends who were also fellow professional athletes. And so I was in Michigan, I was in Florida for a bit, playing for the Everglades.
dude, what was it like going around? Like you must have been like a little celebrity when you had your accent.
Well,
and everything.
I mean,
picking up Florida girls would be like a walk in the park with a Scottish accent. Come on.
It was fun. I mean, but like I was like focused. I was like hockey focus driven,
man.
you know. And I was always told it's like the women will come later in life.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, you party with the boys and have a good time, but it's just I was always like driven for sports.
Well, that's interesting.
You got to go two ways, you know.
I think that's an interesting point. That's an interesting perspective, because I actually was very much that way when I was younger. Was like focused on things.
Yeah, I think it's important.
I'm still focused
Yeah.
now, but I'm also very aware that if you're too focused on your work, then you might miss out on some opportunities.
Of course, yeah.
Because a lot of times, like the classic entrepreneur model is the guy who sacrifices a lot in their 20s.
Yeah.
And then maybe they are successful, maybe they're not. But by the time that they're in their mid 40s, 50s, then they realize, oh, what I don't want to do is try to live out my 20s in my 50s.
No, definitely.
You know,
not.
people do that though. Like you see them like because they didn't get the experiences that they wanted when they were 20. Like money doesn't buy time.
No, but they're just trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
That's what it is, you know. And I think just go with the flow and do what feels right, you know. And just the biggest thing is like finding the balance. And obviously hanging out with people that have your best intention and they don't lead you astray, because that's so easily to get caught up in that crowd, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously with the likes of alcohol and drugs and all that stuff too. So
Doesn't help.
It doesn't help, but
Weed
you know,
might help.
Oh yeah, in moderation. You know, everything in moderation. You
Yeah.
know, that's what it's all about. You know, because we're so privileged as a society and humans. Not obviously all of us, but to be able to have these things that like the tip of our fingers, just to go and do that or experience that. You know, we can. And
So privileged.
the world is your oyster, really. You know, but we don't always necessarily have that privilege wherever we're from in the world.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. That's something you become aware of immediately if you start going to different places.
big time, yeah.
It's like, oh shit, like
Totally.
when we're just when people in different countries are complaining about like the patriarchy and capitalism and all these things, you have to realize that for a lot of the people I'm around, it's like I'm not a wealthy person by any means, but I was raised in a middle class family in the United States.
Yeah.
My dad was in the Navy. We never had to worry about food. That automatically puts you above most people in the world.
Totally, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just having a decent life in Scotland, you are living a privileged life, you know,
Yeah,
from that
big
point
time.
on. So it is good to realize that.
Yeah, just obviously, you know, the self-acknowledgement there of like how lucky you are. I think that's the big thing is you got to have that identity and understand that perspective in yourself and, you know, really see the world for what it is.
Yeah. You're Mr. Scotland.
Yeah, I was Mr. Scott for 3 years, yeah.
When were you Mr. Scotland, man? Can you guys believe episode 7? I got Mr. Scotland on my podcast. We're crushing it.
Yeah, things that happen on your pathway, how the people you meet. I mean, when was Mr. Scotland? So it's 2023 now. So maybe like 2018 to 2021, I was Mr. Scotland.
How did that come about?
So I was like in the modeling industry. I was represented by an agency here in Scotland. I was doing some work abroad and stuff like that too, and I actually got approached by the agency that kind of handles like Mr. and Mrs. Scotland, the sound of the Miss World or Mr. World, and they asked me in for an interview. My agency called me like, "Would you be interested in doing this, Tristan?" I was like, sure, why not? You know, I was just like, oh, see what happens. Went to the interview and then had a chat, and they were like, oh, there's so many people have been here before. We really like you, and then we'll give you a call in 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks they called me later, and they were like, we'd love you to be Mr. Scotland. Here's what we need you to do. Just all these little logistics. I ended up going to Mr. World, and I finished 6th overall in Mr. World with all these other gentlemen from all over the world, which is a really cool experience.
You finished 6th overall for the world, Mr. World.
Yeah.
Oh shit,
it was pretty cool.
6th for the world is pretty fucking good.
It's such a weird thing though, you know, because it's like
it is a bit strange.
It is a bit strange because it is very like, you know, for me, I'm a quite. Right now, I probably seem a little bit more groomed and stuff, but I'm not rough, but I'm like a mountain man. I'm like I'm at my cottage with my dog. I'm in the woods and wilderness. I'm like really loose. I like to wear loose clothes, you know, and like very chilled out. I'm not really a formal guy. So going to these things, I had to be somewhat more groomed and like there was a certain like presentation I had to like give to the people, you know?
Well, that was funny because that's what I said to you when we were talking the other day when I was like, oh, you're like a hippie.
Yeah.
Because we're doing a shoot, right? You're a model for the shoot. You have to look a certain way. You have to look clean cut. And it's part of the role. But then for a second there, I saw, so it's kind of deceiving. You can see yourself. But then really at your heart, you're like a mountain man for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's weird, but I'm happy just to go and roll out on dirt and like hug a tree and do all that stuff too, and like walk barefoot like in the woods and stuff that too. And my close friends are like that too. You know, we're getting really wacky and wild, and we're like dabbling, and like we're all about the inner work and like therapy and plant medicine, and like, you know, like obviously marijuana and all that stuff too is more accessible in the healing aspects, and like diving down to like grounding neurological pathways and how it's beneficial to your own psyche and like how it's really helping the world. And like, you know, it's not even that, it's a traditional thing too, because you look at all these ancient communities that have actually like worked with this medicine and plant medicine, and it's like these communities are like part of nature, and it's like we are biological species that are part of this nature, and it's like something that I'm aligned with as a person, and I'm like, it just feels true to me. And it's such a weird world because it's like you're just dabbling in different worlds, but equally you meet all these sorts of people, and it's like it's part of like being, you know, a human being. You're just playing this like role.
Yeah.
But you're trying to be true to yourself. I mean, I don't even know where I was going with that, but yeah.
No, that's definitely true. I mean, there's a lot to break down there, but yeah. I think overall, like you're saying, we were talking about this at dinner, the world is moving more towards a healthier lifestyle.
100%, yeah. You know, and obviously there's like definitely a raise in consciousness for sure too. People become more awake, people become more high, and we're definitely like transcending, you know, as like what is the greater purpose of like humans? Are we meant to transcend this physical thing? You know, like you see these like monks and these Buddhists that like go into a solitude cave for like 3-5 years, and they're trying to attain enlightenment and transcend, you know. And it's like, what is life? Like, why are all these different religious cultures, and why do they believe this one thing and that thing? I feel like it's all related and it's all like connected in its own way. We all have a different but similar belief system.
What's the most common belief system in is it atheist mostly, or is it Catholic?
What, in Scotland?
Yeah.
I mean, Christianity,
Christian.
yeah. Christianity is pretty dominant, isn't it?
Is it?
What, in general, the world, Catholic.
I guess
like,
Christianity, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe a Catholic too. I mean, I was kind of like, you know, like, I went to church and stuff, and when I was at school, and like Catholic Christianity was kind of like, wasn't like pressed on us, but like, you know, it was like kind of part of like something we were made aware of, you know, and like the story, and it was about Jesus and all that stuff too. But I mean, it's just a generalized story, you know. Every story's got like a hidden kind of meaning, and if you could dig deeper, and especially when you get older, when you start to read more books and like start to talk to more people around from different cultures, you start to learn things that are all like, oh my god, that's like connected to this story that I learned when I was a kid, you know. It's all similar.
There's really common themes for sure.
Totally. And I think that's like, there's such a beauty in that too, because it's like, oh my god, I really know nothing about the world.
Well, in some ways, it's infinitely complex and so simple. Like most cultures, most things. Like I was watching a TikTok, but it was basically about like how like Buddhism and Hinduism and all these spiritual things. The core of what they're trying to teach you is that the pursuit of happiness traditionally doesn't lead you to happiness. And that's really all it is about. You know, it's like a fundamental problem. Like Christianity, I'm Christian, they would call it original sin.
Right, okay.
Like everyone is trying to address that there's some fundamental problem with humanity, kind of.
Yeah.
And everyone is trying to address it in their own different way. But as cheesy as it is, it always comes back to like self-love and love of others.
Totally, yeah, and just the art of being.
Yeah, the art of being.
It's
yeah.
so hard for people too. It's like people are so caught up in the past and the future, and it's just like, okay, we've got our goals set in place, but just be, man. Or
It's
just
so
be,
tough,
just be in that moment, and it's very hard. It's a lot easier said than done, but that's the same with everything. Things are much easier said than done, and life's so competitive because we're trying to work towards something, and we're always trying to attain that goal of like being wealthy, living in a good place, you know, and having good friends. So I think it's got a lot of challenges, and and that's things like meditation, all these things kind of come into play, and they allow you just to kind of be in that moment, and then you can kind of develop your skills further. And
I'm told how lucky my job is a lot of times. I have a good job. I worked hard to get it, and I like what I do. But sometimes I get stressed out, even on this job. Like it's a job that a lot of people would want. Like
it's demanding.
We're in Scotland. Yeah, it's demanding. It's tough, but it's hard for me to even just appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
And then I know like a few months from now, I'm going to look back and go, man, I was in Scotland with Chris. He's like my best friend, Aliva, with all these cool talent. That was so crazy.
Yeah.
But it's so hard for some reason in the moment to just appreciate the magnitude of how great something is.
But it's like everything, as glorified and glamorous as it looks, it's like it's physically and mentally challenging because like even watching you guys, because I understand from the perspective being behind the camera, it's like you've got to get up early, you've got to charge your bars, you've got to do all these things that are like kind of making everything, all the camera gear and video gear working, and that's like in its own, that's quite energetically demanding, and like organizing people on time and working with new talent, and then sometimes people might not work this way that well, and it's like you're managing a lot, and it's like, but it's always that point where like a couple months down the line or however long you reflect back in a situation, you're like, oh, that's really cool, and then you just start to think about it, and then you'll get more from it, and then you'll maybe, oh, I want to go back to Scotland, I want to do this, but it is a beautiful thing, but like everything that's awesome and wonderful, there's always going to be the challenges.
Yeah, but it's I think people wait, like I'm always waiting for everything to feel just right before I can appreciate it. And it's like if you're always waiting for that moment where everything feels just right, it's not going to happen. Not often, maybe a couple times in your life.
But what is just right though, really?
Well, I'm saying like there's always like, for now, I mean, an example would be like I have editing work due right now. So it's been hard for me to enjoy this trip. What I've been telling myself is, but in reality, when I'm out there, I shouldn't even be worrying about this work I have due. Yeah. So I think it's just learning that there's always going to be something that you could allow to hinder you from enjoying the moment.
That's just true. Yeah.
And you got to block that out a bit.
Yeah, I think that's where you bring in perspective though, and it's like you kind of like you're just visually imagining yourself there, like doing everything, and then you just kind of step outside yourself in your head, and then you see where you are, and then you just kind of remind yourself, oh,
everything's okay.
Things are good, man. Like the thing is you get to wake up, like I'm like, every morning I wake up and I see my dog Nacho, and I'm like, this is great. This little soul, just little furball, he loves me. And I get to wake up and breathe beautiful fresh air today. And that in itself is like a blessing to me. And then anything that comes with that, as much as the struggles of to make money and like have a roof over my head and make sure my friends and family are all healthy, these things are just like an extra thing that I'm worried about. But I don't need to be worried about them because they're taking care of themselves. But I just worry about them because I care, obviously, but these are all important aspects, but we don't really need to worry about these things. It's just like, what is that? Just enjoy the moment, man.
Absolutely.
And
chill out.
And chill out. But it's a lot easier said than done, like everything. Yeah. And it's
meditation. Like, we were talking about that sauna. I'm going to do the sauna. Like meditation, just clearing your head is super important. Let's talk. I have two more questions about Scotland, and then we'll wrap this thing up. The first one's a tough question. The second one's pretty easy. Okay. The first one is, we've talked a lot about great things in Scotland. Right. But hey, every country has two sides to it, right? So what's one thing, it doesn't have to be something crazy, but like you would like to see change in Scotland, maybe?
See change in Scotland. Yeah. I would like our country to move a little bit quicker in the motion of like, being more self-sufficient and self-sustainable. rather than being dependent on like outside sources, bringing in like fruit and veg and all those stuff like yearly round. As privileged as it is to get all these fruits and these foods yearly round, I think the demand needs to be more focused intently on our nation as a whole, and I think people need to stop. People need to maybe stop complaining about things in Scotland, because we've got a lot of people like Middle Eastern, well, not Middle Eastern, like people from Bulgaria or Latvia or Poland. They come to Scotland and they work all these really shitty jobs that are they're so-called like potato farming or like raspberry picking, and like people need to realize that we need to kind of start doing this ourselves, because we can't always depend on these people to do this for us, because it's so easy. If we don't have these people, it will just crumble. But we equally need to be better at respecting one another, and going about our daily lives and really caring and loving the person next to us, and understanding that everyone's probably going through a hard time, and just kind of bettering our nation and just trying to every day one up ourselves and people and those around us. So I think just everyone just being better. Yeah, as a whole, that's
just improvement.
Yeah, just improvement. But I think even as a small country, I think as a global society, the Earth, we need to all be better.
Definitely. I mean, everyone's going to agree with that for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much I would love to see, and just maybe respect more of the land. Yeah, because you get people that it all starts with education in school too, and obviously people need to understand that we can't take this for granted, because she's still a precious being, Mother Gaia. And
Mother Gaia.
Yeah, Mother Gaia. And we need to just really love her and respect her and take care of her and tread lightly on her,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the Scottish people are good about that, right?
I think there's two sides to the coin. I think there's 50-50. People are very respectful and they care and they watch and they manage and they try and support the land. But then there's the other people that just take it for granted, and you get the dickheads. No, we were all once probably a dickhead once in our life. We've done things that are stupid we may possibly regret, but people maybe get too drunk and they start abusing the land, leaving glass bottles, and they tenting and like shitting in places that are not really sustainable, and like all these these things happening.
Sustainable shitting. So that's the big thing that needs to change in Scotland, ladies and gentlemen.
That is a problem though, because and it's like people like during like World War II, there was like the clearances and for clearing out land for farming, and they cleared off a lot of like the native species, the big trees, and like they hunted the animals to extinction, and we need to like get back to our original roots, and like these are important things to kind of get back on track with, and everyone needs to be involved.
Yeah, and Scotland could be a good example of that. And then the last question is just like, what's something you're most grateful for in Scotland? You said probably the nature though, right? That's kind of similar to the first question.
Well, I mean, grateful is like, I think one of the coolest things is like right to roam. So you could like roam anywhere in Scotland.
Really?
So if you wanted to get from like point A to point B, and there was like someone's house, or obviously you gotta be respectful, someone's house or garden, there was like livestock in the field, you're allowed to go across that land. You're allowed to camp on that land. Obviously, granting permission from the landowner, but you can still legally camp there as long as you're respectful. But you can get anywhere in Scotland. It's completely right to roam. So the whole land is open access. There's
that's beautiful.
Even if it says private land, you're still allowed to legally go across private land. That's just because someone says they want you on your land, but you're still legally allowed to do it. So
nice.
But that's on that's obviously the unwritten code is respect. And respect the owners and people in the area. So that's probably one of my favorite things about Scotland.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. I like the national parks are probably like the best thing that the U.S. ever did.
Oh, 100%.
Like I can't even there's so much that we get wrong. Like I'm so surprised that those places didn't like get commercialized and capitalized, and hotels and Disney parks and stuff like that, but they didn't. Somehow they managed to write that code and protect the land. And so like I think government's protecting the land, it's got to be like near the top of the most important things that they
100%.
do.
100%. It needs to keep evolving too, because the population's not getting any smaller, so we need to manage it accordingly also. That's another thing. And obviously people need things like oil and all gas and all this stuff too, and they can't really be disrupting certain old communities, like obviously in America, native tribes, and in Scotland, it's like the fracking and all that stuff too, the oil business. All these things need to be managed accordingly, because we all need to think that something is living in that area, like obviously sea life, and there's humans in the area, and we want to just think of the bad effects that it could cause, so we just need to be proactive in thinking about these things.
Well, amazing. All right. Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing a glimpse of what it is like here in Scotland. You're a really interesting man. You have a very interesting perspective, and I guess that's basically it, man.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it, bro.
Yeah. Any words? What's like a good Scottish goodbye we can leave them with?
We'll just say, as you would say cheers in Scotland, you would say Slàinte mhath.
Slanjava?
Yeah, Slanjava. Good health. Cheers and good health.
Slanjava. See you guys. Sweet, man.